PCOS is not incurable. Your body is not wired to stay in one pattern, one groove for the rest of your life. If you've been diagnosed with PCOS, you may have been told directly or indirectly that this is just something that you'll have to manage forever. And over time, that message doesn't just stay external, it becomes internal. It starts to feel true because your experience seems to confirm it. But today, I want to show you something different, not from a place of just being positive or hopeful, but from what neuroscience shows us to be true. Your body is not fixed. Your system is not locked into one way of functioning. And if it feels like it is, it's not because your body is incapable of change. It's because most approaches to PCOS are missing the foundation. They miss the system underneath everything that runs your body, your autonomic nervous system. And this matters because what you believe entirely shapes what you believe is possible for your healing. So I want to talk with you about this system and then why you feel so hardwired even when you're not. So I like to think of the autonomic nervous system as the engine that runs your body. Just like an engine runs a car in the background, this system is running all of your bodily functions automatically. Your digestion, hormones, metabolism, immune system, your reproductive system, all of it, okay? Literally everything in your body, which is why this system is not an optional extra in healing. It's not something that you just add on later. It is the foundation. And this system has one primary job: to keep you safe and alive at all costs. And it's a very ancient system. It's been evolving for over 500 million years, and every mammal has it. So this is not a fragile or faulty system inside of you. It is brilliant. It is highly intelligent. It is adaptive, and it's completely devoted to your survival. So devoted, in fact, that it will redirect energy away from healing, hormone balance and regulation and toward protection if it believes you are not safe. Now, there are only two primary ways that you experience your autonomic nervous system. One is when your nervous system senses that you are safe. That's what we call being in regulation. The other is when your nervous system senses that you are in danger. That's called dysregulation, which is simply active self-protection. It's your nervous system deciding, I don't sense you're safe, so I need to protect you. And what I want to name is, it's not physiologically possible, and this is what neuroscience confirms for us. It is not physiologically possible to fully heal PCOS at the root or to experience a full, healthy, expansive life unless your system is predominantly in a state of regulation. PCOS in any form is a reflection of a nervous system that is just spending too much time in dysregulation, in active self-protection. So the path to healing at the root is that you are predominantly anchored in regulation in your nervous system, meaning your nervous system senses that you are predominantly safe. And when that happens, it's as if your nervous system moves from being in front of you, clenching, bracing, scanning, protecting, to standing beside you, right? And it's still here, it's still available to protect you at any moment, but it's no longer running the show, right? Now, what happens so often, not just in the world of PCOS, but across so many areas of health, is that we are trying to treat the symptoms of dysregulation. So remember, your digestion, your hormones, metabolism, immune function, your reproductive system, and so on, these are all governed by your autonomic nervous system. If your system is dysregulated, meaning actively protecting you, the symptoms of that dysregulation are going to be the things that we don't want, like irregular cycles, infrequent ovulation, acne, hair changes, insulin resistance, fatigue, anxiety, brain fog, inflammation, stubborn weight, fertility issues, and so on. And those are not random. They are expressions of a system organized around protection. And the biggest problem, the biggest reason we believe that we are incurable is that we are treating symptoms without ever addressing the system creating them. And that was my experience too. I was told PCOS was for life. So I built my life around managing it, coping with it, trying to stay on top of it. But PCOS is not incurable. Incurable is not the limit of your body. It's the limit of the model that you've been given to follow. Because when we actually change what's happening in our nervous system, those symptoms just begin to resolve. Now, there are only two reasons why your nervous system becomes dysregulated. Only two. The first is real danger in the present moment. And this is highly intelligent. This is adaptive, right? This is how your system is designed to work. Because we are not meant to be regulated all the time. So let's say you and I are back in a hunting and gathering environment. So we're talking, we're walking, we're having a beautiful time out in nature, right? It's easy. We're picking berries together, right? Maybe we're eating them as we go, and our systems are regulated. Suddenly, we both hear something, and our nervous system scans the environment to detect danger. What is it, right? And we see there is a lion in the distance. And I turn to you and I say, don't worry, just stay calm. Just lie down here with me. Let's look up at the sky. Let's just keep on eating our berries. You'd think, Hannah, what are you saying? Let's go right now. Because that would be completely maladaptive, right? Meaning it wouldn't be helpful to just stay regulated in that moment. The appropriate response would be to become dysregulated, to actively self-protect, right? To mobilize, to run, to get away from the lion, right? Because there is very real danger. And the goal would be that once we escape, once the threat, the danger has passed, my nervous system would recognize, okay, we're safe now, right? And return to regulation. So we want to become dysregulated when there is a real danger. And we want to return to regulation when we sense that we are safe. So the second reason we become dysregulated is something called perceived danger. And this is what neuroscience confirms for us is one of the most predominant reasons for chronic symptoms, chronic PCOS symptoms. Perceived danger is when your nervous system responds to something in the present moment as if it's dangerous, right? Not because it actually is, but because it feels familiar to something in the past. So even if your life now is safe, your system might not experience it that way. So your body stays organized for protection, not because of what is happening right now, but because of what it learnt before. Now it's the engine, this autonomic nervous system, that's doing all of this, right? So how does your nervous system decide what is safe, and what is dangerous. This happens through something called neuroception. Neuroception is your own built-in threat detection system that lives subcortically in your brainstem at the base of your skull here, right? And in every millisecond of your life, it's been looking out into the world and asking one question. Am I safe, or do I need to protect? Right? So it scans your environment, right? Even right now, as you're watching me, it's already doing this, right? It's sensing my tone of voice. It's sensing my facial expressions, my body language, asking, is Hannah safe, or do I need to protect? Right? It's taking cues from incredibly subtle signals. Things you may not even consciously notice. Your system is picking it all up and filtering them through your threat detector. Even before you were born, right, when you were in utero, in your mama's belly, this was already developed and taking in information. So if you have ever felt like there is something wrong with you, my hope is just hearing that is showing you how brilliant you truly are. And it's not just scanning the outside world, it's also scanning your inside world, inside your body. This is called interoception. So your system is not just asking, is what's out there safe? It's also asking, is what's happening in here safe? So every sensation, every shift in your internal state, every internal signal, every feeling, based on all this information, it makes a decision. Do I organize this body for safety and connection, or for survival and protection? And here's the important part. The way your threat detector makes that decision, whether you are safe or not, is by referencing an internal memory bank. You can think of this like a database that lives in your midbrain and stores all of your lived experiences. Everything you've ever been through is stored here, especially the experiences that felt unsafe, overwhelming, or unresolved. And you don't have to consciously remember all of them, they are all stored. And this also includes not only what you have lived through, but also what came before you. So what was inherited through your parents, your grandparents, and their parents, and their parents, and so on. And it's not just the scary or adverse experiences, all the good things are stored in that database too. But when it comes to safety, your nervous system prioritizes what feels unsafe because its job is to protect you. So when your system is trying to decide if something in the present moment is safe or not, it immediately looks to that database. And the way it functions is, it doesn't ask, is this identical to something from the past? It asks, is this similar enough? Right? So it looks for patterns, for what's familiar signals, right? What I call the flavor of past experiences. And my threat detector asks, okay, database, what intel do we have on this parent, this home, this face, this smell, this tree, this environment? Is this safe, or do I need to protect? And in a millisecond, our threat detector responds, right? So if something in your present moment feels similar to something unsafe in your past, your nervous system can respond as if that danger is happening now, even when your life now is actually safe, right? So that's perceived threat. So remember, it's not responding to truth, it's responding to familiarity, okay? And what we understand now through neuroscience and research is that your autonomic nervous system, this engine inside of you that runs all of your bodily functions, it's shaped by your internal environment and your external environment, your lived experiences, and your nervous system history, okay? So if you're living with PCOS symptoms, those challenges and struggles are not simply there because you were born with them, right? It might seem that way, especially if you've had them since you were very young. But again, what we're beginning to understand is that your system is entirely shaped by your environment, your experiences, and how you were nurtured. So if your system developed in with early life stress, so growing up in environments that were chaotic, unpredictable, or unsafe, having parents who were anxious, unwell, depressed, disconnected, or overwhelmed themselves, or you developed in a home where there was emotional neglect, or where you were constantly on edge, right? Never knowing what was going to come next. And for some, that may also include verbal, physical, or sexual abuse. And I know that's not the easiest thing to talk about, but this is the reality of life, so that's why I'm talking about it. Now, for others, it might be early medical trauma, surgeries, being born premature, right? Early health challenges. So certain environments, sensations, or experiences occur when we're very young, even when we're in utero, in our mother's womb, and we feel that stress. We experience that stress. We absorb the surges of adrenaline and cortisol, right? And then our system starts to sense that as normal, right? We start to feel on a cellular level that the world is an unsafe space. And if the world is unsafe, then we have to become hypervigilant, right? On guard, in control, always trying to know what's around the corner, right? And here's the thing. Many people say, well, I'm just hardwired this way. But often it's because they have never looked at those earlier life circumstances that shaped their nervous system into being anxious, hypervigilant, highly sensitized, right? Or on the other end, shut down in a low energy, low metabolic state. For many, it's not one or the other, it's both happening together, what we call freeze, okay? So we're highly revved up, and at the same time, we are shut down, okay? Which can feel both very intense, but also very exhausting. And this is what we often see in those living with PCOS. Their system stays revved up while also carrying a level of shutdown that numbs the world, right? Numbs sensations, right? Making it harder to sense, harder to feel, harder to express emotions. And that is because the past is being superimposed or overcoupled with the present. Your nervous system is still perceiving danger where there isn't actually danger. It hasn't received the message that the threat is over. It still believes the world is not safe, so I have to stay on high alert, right? I can't come down. And as a result, your nervous system continues protecting you, even when you don't need that active protection, right? And herein lies where the stuckness in dysregulation comes from. So you also don't need to have, very big, obvious trauma, a big, obvious trauma history for this work to be important. Even in the most loving homes, even if you had, wonderful parents, you had a wonderful childhood, there are things that couldn't be met perfectly. And as Peter Levine, whose work has deeply mentored me, as he says, it's not possible to go through life unscathed by trauma. All of us, to some degree, are experiencing unnecessary dysregulation. And the symptoms of that self-protection show up in the body, right? Irregular cycles, reproductive issues, hormone imbalances, fatigue, anxiety, brain fog, inflammation, blood sugar issues, and so on. So when we look at PCOS through this lens, what we see so often is an underlying nervous system that has learned at a deep cellular level that the world is not safe. And when your nervous system is organized around that sense of I'm not safe, it stays in active self-protection, right? It hasn't received the message that the threat is over. So your body adapts. And over time, that adaptation becomes your baseline, even if your life has changed. And this is where that hardwired feeling comes from. Not because you are hardwired, but because your system has adapted to that same protective pattern for a long time without being shown anything different. So instead of thinking, this is just my body, this is incurable, I'm just hardwired this way, right? We begin to understand much more accurately, my nervous system learnt a pattern, and what is learnt can be unlearned, right? And this is what we call neuroplasticity. And once you understand neuroplasticity, your perspective will never be the same again. Neuro means nervous system, and your nervous system is essentially like plastic. It can mold, it can remold, rewire and reshape, right? It can change, it can learn, it can grow, it can heal. It can create new patterns and new baselines in the body. And yes, this doesn't stop for our entire lives. So our real goal in regulating the nervous system is that we have to show, not tell, our nervous systems that we are safe. Because if you are safe in your life, or predominantly safe in the present, but you still feel very stuck, dysregulated, exhausted, or unwell, all that means is that your nervous system doesn't yet know that the life you are living is safe for you. That's it. It's not punishing you. You are not broken. It's not doing this because something is wrong with you. It simply does not yet know that you are safe. And it will continue to protect you until it does. But you cannot think your way into safety. You have to show your nervous system through repeated, lived, felt experience that you are safe again and again, until that reality becomes your baseline. And this doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes practice, it takes repetition, right? To gradually build your capacity. And when you begin to do that, when you start to befriend your nervous system and you attune to it and you learn to speak its language of the felt experience, you begin to see something important that I hope you're seeing already, that you, again, are not broken, right? There is nothing wrong with you. And if you feel stuck, it's not because you cannot change, okay? It's because your nervous system doesn't yet know that it's safe. And I see this all the time with women that I work with, right? As they begin to feel even just slightly safer, right? More embodied, more connected to their body. They start to say things like, gosh, I didn't realize how clenched and tense I was until I felt even 10% safer, right? I don't think I've ever actually felt my body. Because when you've been living in survival, that feels normal, okay? You identify with it, but it's not you. It's a state your nervous system has learned. And anything that has been learned can be unlearned, right? But just like building a house, we need a foundation. If there is no foundation when stress hits, and it will, the system cannot hold. And this is what happens for many people who have experienced early stress, early trauma, or chronic stress throughout their lives. Their foundation feels very shaky, right? Or like it just wasn't ever fully built in the first place. Which is why, if you've had symptoms for years and years, especially from a young age, it can feel like nothing is changing, right? Like it's hardwired. Most PCOS approaches, although, very, very well intended, they leave out this foundational piece. They skip over how the nervous system works, right? They skip over this protective mechanism, right? Which is why people believe that they are incurable. And then what happens is they go straight to the diet, the exercise, the supplements, the stress management, the breathing techniques, the movement, the mindset work. And maybe this is you, right? Always trying something new, trying to improve, following protocols, getting coaching or therapy that is very cognitive and talk-based, right? And all those things can help. They do have a place, but they don't address the underlying root pattern, right? They are working on top of the problem, not at the level it's actually happening, right? So if it feels like I can't change, this is my body, that's not true. It simply means your system hasn't been supported at the level it needs. What you've been told is incurable is not the limit of your body. It's the limit of the model you've been given to follow. Your body is not fixed. Your nervous system is not finished. And what has been learned can be updated, right? Anything that is adaptive can adapt and change. If this is resonating with you, I have a masterclass, a 3-part masterclass called The Missing Piece of Healing PCOS. And I walk through how your nervous system works, why it ends up seeming like it's hardwired, and what it actually takes to heal, so that we can actually rewire that nervous system, right, and allow it to become healthy and whole, maybe for the first time ever. And you can check that out in the link below in the description box. And I'd love to meet you in the masterclass. Okay, take very good care. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.